The story of my grandparents' love story, until the fairy tale stopped that never actually ended, I find to be one of the most powerful and heartfelt stories that I have ever heard. They went through every phase of their life together, learned together, loved each other, and grew old together. Their love was so powerful that it started in their adolescence. When my grandmother was 6 and my grandfather was 8, they met for the first time, and I believe that they fell in love there, except it didn't seem to be that way. When they were younger, they both lived in a triple-decker in West Roxbury, and it was a very common theme for my mom's side of the family to live in one of these types of homes, and my grandfather's family was the same way. Both of their heritage were 100% Lebanese, and it was almost like they were made to be together. My grandmother had a crush on my grandfather ever since he was 8 years old, but he did not realize that her kind soul and beauty was so powerful until he grew to be about 10 years older. Growing up, my grandfather was always strongly invested in baseball and many other sports and didn't really have eyes for anything else. My grandmother would sit and watch him play baseball with her friends and admire him for years and years. It wasn't until my grandfather was 18 and my grandmother was 16 until they finally started dating. I believe that this made their love grow fonder and fonder for each other. When they started dating, they fell madly in love and spent every single moment of the day together. It was always Bob and Rose. During this time, they went on dates, went to parties, met each other's family, and just simply enjoyed each other's company. Problems began to arise when my grandfather got drafted into the army. It hurt them both so much to be apart from each other while they were so in love. My grandmother would just sit on the couch and wait for him to get back. On the other side of things, my grandfather could not stand being shipped away without being with her. It got so hard for him that he got sent back and discharged from the army so he could be with her again. This absence made their love grow so much fonder. Shortly after, they wanted to promise that they would be with each other forever. They quickly were engaged and got married at the age of 21. 6 months after their wedding, they had their first of 5 children, Diane. Then they had Charles, Renee, my mother, Liz, and Joey. They raised these 5 children with everything that they had and loved them with all of their might. All of the children were raised with the quality which was most important in the family name, and still is now. That is the importance of family. They were taught that no matter who you have in your life, they come and go, but you will always have your family. As the kids were growing up, my grandfather worked as a mechanical engineer and my grandmother worked at a taxi company. As the children grew up, they also had children of their own. My grandparents fell more in love each day. They ended up having 16 grandchildren. We would all go over Sithu and Jidus, which means grandma and grandpa in Lebanese, and play and talk with our cousins as all the aunts and uncles bonded in the living room. This was my grandparents' favorite thing because all their loved ones were together at once and everyone was appreciating their family and their loved ones. Then the unexpected happened. My grandmother just turned 78 and she started not to feel well. My grandfather took her to the doctors and they diagnosed her with stage 4 liver cancer and gave her maximum a year to live. This was so hard for my family to cope with, especially my grandfather, because of how much everyone loved her. With my grandmother's optimistic spirit and love for the world, she fought every day as hard as she could. My grandfather would spend countless hours taking care of his wife and making sure all of their last moments together were as happy as they could be. Even though they were going through these hard emotional times together, they never grew apart, only closer. She fought for a hard 8 months, and everyone started to realize that her time was coming to an end. On June 21st of 2019, she passed away by the side of my grandfather. He was heartbroken that the woman he spent his whole life falling in love with, caring for, and loving was taken away from him so suddenly in such a harsh way. When she died, a piece of him left that day, and he will never be the same. When she was in the hospital, he turned to my mom and said, "I guess this is the end of our fairy tale." My mom responded with, "No, Dad, your fairy tale is never over, even if she's gone. For the time that she has been away from us, even if they are not physically together, he has held her close to his heart every single day and will continue to honor her, share her stories until the last second that he can."